out of the game.
Hi, I'm Kelsa Dickey, the CEO of the Financial Coach Academy and my financial coaching business, Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. My coaching journey began more than a decade ago with me helping people for free from my dining room table. What was once a little business of mine has grown into a 7-figure company that employs a team of people. My goal is simple, to help you fall more and more in love with financial coaching. I believe financial coaching is the most rewarding way to make a living. If you are an aspiring financial coach or have been coaching for years, I'm here to help you create a business you love that gets your clients massive results. Let's get to it. Hey, financial coach. I am super excited for today's episode. We're going to continue exploring getting out of debt for people who choose that as part of their financial journey. But before I get into today's topic, I want to read one of the reviews that was left on Apple Podcasts for this podcast. This was by Haley B. Dubs, and she says, I believe in Kelsa's mission wholeheartedly and have invested in Financial Coach Academy, the Financial Coaching Toolkit, Financial Coaching Mastermind, and her book, The Financial Coaching Playbook. This podcast is exactly what everyone needs. If you're considering being a financial coach or if you're already a current coach looking to finesse your skills, definitely check out this podcast and share it with all of your friends. When I read that, it totally warmed my heart. Thank you so much, Haley B. Dubs, for leaving that review. I really appreciate it. And really and truly, thank you for being a listener and thank you for being a student of this craft and investing in yourself and your own skill set as a coach. I love hearing about that. Thank you for the review. All right. Also, really quick promotion announcement. Today, this episode is dropping on April 27th, which means in 2 days, we're going to be in Denver hosting our VIP day, which is already sold out. But we are also hosting a happy hour for financial coaches that night. So if you are in the Denver area on the 29th at 6:30 p.m., please join me and a bunch of other financial coaches at the Art Hotel Denver Fire Terrace Room. I don't even know where that's at, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to find it. So I hope you will too. If you'd like to join us for the happy hour, it's totally free. You'll buy your own drinks, whatever those end up being. We just ask that you RSVP. We want to make sure we have enough room for everybody. You can RSVP and let us know you're coming by going to financialcoachacademy.com, clicking on events, and then clicking on VIP day will be one of your options. If you scroll down to the bottom of that page, you'll see a button where you can RSVP to join us for the happy hour. So let's just get together and have a really good time brainstorming, sharing ideas. I can't wait to meet some of you. All right, so let's dive in to exploring debt even more. The first thing I want to say is there is no one right way to get out of debt. In this episode, I'm going to share 5 different strategies, but even then, these are not the only 5, I'm sure. They're just the ones that we pull from most often, and so these are the ones I'm going to highlight in this episode. Also, really quick disclaimer, this episode assumes that the client wants to pay off their debts. Okay. This is not an episode where we're talking about other debt payoff or debt management methods, things like debt settlement or refinancing your debts or debt consolidation or bankruptcy or any of those other methods. This episode in particular is about paying off debt. So once the client makes that decision, what are their options? And these are all options that we want to present to the client. I know when I first started coaching, if I had a client who had a goal of paying off their debts, or probably when I first started coaching, if I'm being totally honest, I would have that be the client's goal. Like I would put that on them. And again, we talked about that the last episode, that is not going to be everyone's goal, right? But I would put that on there and then I would have the client give me their details, right? The balances, interest rates, payment amounts, those types of things. And then I would put all of that information into a debt snowball spreadsheet and I'd show it to them and I would say, see, this is how you're going to do it. See, this is what you have to do. Or see, this is the way, right? And I just, some clients would like really stick to the plan. It would be amazing. That would be wonderful. But then others wouldn't. And for those who wouldn't stick to it, we would then kind of go into brainstorming mode and I would start asking more questions about like, why were they getting stuck or what didn't they like and those types of things. And I would really want to figure out like what was working, what was not working. And we would tweak the plan to make it work better for them. And we would make those adjustments so that they felt like it fit them better in order to make the entire strategy flow better, right? And that's when I realized that I was probably doing that backwards. So I probably need to take the time to figure out what's going to work best for the client. A strategy is determined, not afterwards, right? So because there is not one way that will work for everyone, we need to explore the options on the front end. The debt snowball isn't the best way to get out of debt. It is just the best way for some people, right? So instead of me making that decision for my clients, what if I just started by brainstorming and bringing curiosity to the plan and talking about the different options with the client and seeing which one did they get most excited by, right? Which one was going to be the best fit for them before an option was chosen? In other words, my goal became, I can't wait to discover which way is best for this client right now. Like that was really the energy I brought to it, was this thought of like, I can't wait to figure out with this client which one's going to be best for them, right? And the result has become more clients getting out of debt, but also a more enjoyable process for the client overall, more buy-in from the client, and more excitement for the journey ahead. So if you think back to episode 17 and 18, we talked about those two different frameworks for financial coaching. We start with education. And during the education phase, I am gaining awareness of what the client thinks of their debt, how they feel about it, what's most important to them when it comes to getting out of debt. And I explored a number of these sort of questions and topics and that kind of thing in the last episode. So you may want to revisit that, but we're going to kind of dive in even more in depth right now as well. So here are some of the questions I ask when a client has debt. What do you think of debt in general? With this one, you will hear a lot. It's evil, right? You just will. I personally think that if we call debt evil, we are giving it way too much power. It is simply something that some people can use really well and other people choose not to use it, right? Or it doesn't serve them well. And that is absolutely okay. Have you heard about getting out of debt? Best practices or things to do, things you shouldn't do, that kind of thing. Now, this is really important. You do want to hear from the client what those things are, because if later you suggest a particular strategy that they've heard from someone else is a bad idea or stupid or wrong or whatever the case may be, they may not be totally bought into it. They may be questioning your advice or sort of why you're bringing that up. And so it's helpful to know really early on what the client already thinks of things before diving in. That way you can simply address it when you bring it up. You can say, I know earlier you talked about so-and-so told you this wasn't a good option. That's true for some people, but here's why I maybe want to talk about it as a possible option for you. Here's why I think you're different, right? Because again, everyone's different. Also, the client's foundation of knowledge is going to be different from mine and yours as financial experts. So we have to kind of figure out what that is before we move on, because we've got to be able to meet them where they're at. So that sort of determines our starting point, right? I'll also say, tell me overall, how do you feel about your debt? Sometimes you'll hear things like, well, it stresses me out, or I hate it. But also, I don't know. It's just there. I fear it always will be. I have had clients with $1,000 in credit card debt who are losing sleep at night, really worried, really anxious about it, super stressed out about it. And I have had clients with $99,000 in credit card debt. I kid you not, $99,000 in credit card debt. And their response was, we figured we paid off at some point. Really and truly, I swear that was their response, okay? So here's the thing, though, is imagine if I had gone straight into action mode for that second client, the client that's like, I just figured we'd get there eventually. And here I am like, we got to get this paid off. We got to go. We got to hustle, blah, blah, blah. Like if I had brought that energy into it, I am not meeting them where they're at, right? So another question you can ask is, how often do you think about your debt? It's a really great question. What have you tried previously when it came to paying off your debts? In other words, what types of things have you already tried, right? What do you think created the debt that you have? Have you ever looked at the total of your debt? Is this a number that you are aware of or that you know? And then after I ask that question, depending on what their answer is, this is usually when I'm going to show them, we're going to get clear on the circumstances, right? I'm going to show them their debts. Now, I when I do this, this is so important, Coach. I hope you hear me. You're going to want to pause after you give them the total and you show them. You're going to want to give them a moment to tell you what do you think? How are you feeling seeing this number right now? This is really important because for some people, they've never looked at the total before. And we don't have an emotional attachment to that number, right? It's not our debt, okay? But they might. And if you say that number and then quickly move on, they might be going through some major mind drama in that moment. They might be like, oh my God, this is horrible. Oh God, like we're doomed. Oh, this is worse than I thought. Holy cow, I had no idea it had gotten that bad. They're literally going through all of these thoughts in their brain and you're on to like the next topic. Okay. So you've got to take a minute to say, I'm curious. What do you think? Now that you see this number, share with me what's going through your mind right now. Tell me how you're feeling as we talk about this, right? You need to pause in that moment. Please do not rush on to the next thing. Please, please, please give that client some space to digest what the hell just happened, okay? Because for some of them, they're going to be super shocked, I promise, okay? Now, another question that you can ask is there one debt in particular that really frustrates you or really annoys you? Or is there one of your debts that you really just hate? Okay. That is a really important question. And the answer to it will determine the strategy we use later, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. Now, another key purpose of the education phase, which is where we're at in this process, is to make sure that me and the client are on the same page as far as those circumstances. So that can sound like a number of things. So your total debt balance is blank, right? Could also sound like you have so much on credit cards, you have this much on student loans, and you have this much on car loans. Okay. So in other words, I am breaking down the numbers for them because again, a lot of times the client is not looking at it. Okay. They don't know the exact numbers. Your total payments each month going to your debt balances is X. Okay. The total interest you pay every month on your debt is blank or every year. Okay. The amount of money that we show you have to throw towards your goals or to pay down your debt in addition to that payment is X. Okay. So again, you're kind of looking at their budget at this point and you're saying, here's the amount that we have extra that could be going towards this if we wanted it to. Okay. You might tell them their credit score, or you can ask them what their credit score is if they know that, which would determine some of the options as well. Mostly some of the other options that we're not going to explore, debt settlement, debt consolidation, refinancing, those types of things, are pretty dependent on a credit score or will affect their credit score. So you kind of want to know where they stand with that before they move forward. And then the impact it's having on their goals. So you could say something like, by paying off these debts, it should speed up your ability to buy a house, change jobs, even if that means, us waiting a little while to be able to do those things. This is going to make it so that feels like an easier step for you or something like that, right? And again, at this point, we've already talked about a lot of those questions that we explored in the prior episode, where we talked about like why, what's on the other side of this debt for you? Why is it so important that you get out of this? Okay. Now, remember, the most important thing that we are always trying to do as financial coaches is to create buy-in from the client, because that buy-in is where their motivation comes from. It is their internal driver, right? Them having the thought, I am doing this. I'm going to do this. And then that translates into feeling excited, motivated, empowered to take action. And that's where the magic is, right? We've talked about that over the last few episodes. Since our clients are real human beings, what helps them to create that buy-in might be different for each person that you are coaching around debt. And I think that's really beautiful. So let's dive in and talk about what the 5 strategies are that we use most often at Fiscal Fitness and see how this helps the client to have more buy-in, okay? Option 1 is the Snowball method. I'm going to start with this one because it's by far the most popular. This is where you organize all of your balances from lowest to highest. You pay the minimum payments to all of your balances except the lowest remaining balance, which you then throw all extra money at until it's paid off. Once that one is paid off, you throw all of the extra money towards the next lowest balance and so on. This method is by far, probably the most popular. It's been made popular by Dave Ramsey. Okay. Who is this right for? This strategy is right for those who love instant gratification and need quick wins to stay motivated. You will pay off small debts quickly, which confirms that they're doing something right? And some people need that proof. This is great for people who have very little trust in themselves around the decisions that they're making with money, or they don't necessarily believe in what's possible yet. So you can help them create those little wins, right? I also think this strategy works well for people with a whole bunch of debts, and there's a few that are really small. This is the person who feels as if the number of debts that they have, it's like clutter, right? And it's like cluttering their mind or their energy, and they're just like juggling all of these payments going out. And so it's not necessarily something we do for motivation purposes, but it's like, hey, let's just get 3 fewer bills or monthly payments going out every single month so you've got less to keep track of, right? And so this works really well if they've got like 12 different debts that they're making payments to, and 3 of them are like less than a couple $100 each or something. Okay, option 2 or method number 2 is the avalanche method. This is where you organize all of your debts from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. You pay the minimum payments to all debt except for the one with the highest interest rate, which you throw all of your money at until it's paid off. And then you repeat with the highest interest rate debt next, and so on. So the idea here is that the higher interest rate debt costs you the most money in interest. So by eliminating that one first, it's costing you the most money. You free up the money the fastest, okay? This method is made popular, but also favored by financial guru Susie Orman. Who is this strategy right for? People who are motivated to get out of debt and they do not need a quick win. They are like committed, driven. They know it's possible. They know they're going to do it. And they are motivated by financial gains, okay? So if you can show them that this one is going to cost you the least amount of money and they are inspired by that financial win, it is going to be great for them. It's also great for those folks who have one debt that has a significantly higher interest rate than all of the others. This is also really great for like any client who has like a payday loan, paycheck advance type of thing, title loan, all of those ones that have like exorbitant, like disgustingly pathetic interest rates. Those can be really great to just prioritize that one regardless of the balance. Okay. Method number 3, Kiyosaki method. This is where you organize all of your debts by the highest payment amount. So highest payment to lowest payment, and excluding real estate because Robert Kiyosaki loves real estate. And so you don't put your mortgages and that kind of thing in there. You pay the minimum balances on all of your debts except for the one with the highest payment amount, which you then throw all of your extra money at until it's paid off. And then you prioritize the one with the next highest payment amount and so on until your debt is gone. So, and like I said, this was made popular or favored by Robert Kiyosaki. He's the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Who is this strategy right for? This is good for someone who has a very tight budget and not a lot of wiggle room with very little extra money, okay? When the highest payment debt gets freed up first, it offers flexibility and some breathing room for any of those unexpected whammies. So if you think about it, a person with a really high, let's say car payment of like $500 a month, and they have a very tight budget where they have like $20 extra every single month, a $100 whammy causes them a lot of stress, a lot of creativity that they've got to pull from in order to figure out how to pay for that without it going on debt, right? By freeing up $500, we now create that cushion every month so we're able to navigate those whammies that might pop up so they don't have to go back on debt, right? And that's really the idea here, is that by freeing up the one with the highest payment amount first, you're freeing up the cash flow, which then can be used to create leverage and scale and optimize your finances in other ways, ideally going to pay down more debt or just sort of going towards investments or something like that, like real estate, which is, again, what Robert Kiyosaki loves. Okay, so method number 4, I call this the most triggering method, or sort of like Debbie Downer option, or like the one with the most emotional baggage, if you will. We've called it a whole bunch of different things. This is where you pay the minimums on all of your debts. except for the one that makes you sort of sick to your stomach or makes you feel yucky or ill or sort of like puts you in a really toxic mindset or makes you feel really badly about yourself, and that holds you back. So who is this strategy right for? If there is one debt that makes a person really angry or jaded, or it sort of makes it so that they're reliving a past bad decision over and over and over again, and it's sort of like weighing on them constantly, then what we want to do is give that person permission to get that reminder out of their life by paying it off first. Once they've eliminated that debt, then we probably are going to switch to another one of the strategies that best fits that client. Okay. An example for this one is I had a client who had 3 credit cards, each with about $5,000 on them. And we were looking and we were trying to figure out like which debt should they pay off first. And one of those credit cards was the $5,000 that she paid her attorney for her divorce. And every time she made that payment, she like relived that time of her life. She got jaded and bitter and frustrated and angry and sad and heartbroken, and she grieved all over again. And it was just this constant reminder that really held her back from sort of thinking about her future, right? Like it kept putting her in her past. And so we prioritized that one. And it was one of those things where like as soon as it was gone, she closed that credit card, which we could do a whole nother episode about this of like, do we close credit cards? Do we not? Again, it depends, right? And in this case, this client, it absolutely made sense to close that and never think about it again, you know? Another example that I have is actually from Michael and I. We did one of those stupid cookware classes when we were engaged. And you know, you could attend like that cookware class, and like if you attended, they would like pay for a trip for you, right? You'd get a free trip to like Cabo or Cozumel or one of those places. And I remember we went and we were like, we're not going to buy anything. This is so stupid, right? Like we're not going to spend thousands of dollars on cookware when we're planning for a wedding and all that kind of stuff. But we totally did. And we put it on a credit card, and it was so stupid. Granted, the cookware did last us a really long time, and we really did like the cookware, but it was just not like, there's so many things wrong with the way we made the decision. Okay. So when we were getting out of debt, it was just that thing that like, I kept thinking like, God, why did we do that? Why did we do that? You know? And so we prioritized that debt. It wasn't the highest interest rate. It wasn't the lowest balance. It was just one of those things where I was like, that was just like, we can't take it back, but we would not make that same decision today. So can we just get that reminder out of our life? You know? And we did. So you will have that one apply to some clients and not others, of course, right? Because some people are just like, I hate all of my debt equally. Actually, I don't like any of it, right? Okay. Method number 5 is a customized method. So maybe we pick a debt that is triggering for the client first, and then we shift to some of the smaller ones to clean those up. And then we pick one with the highest interest rate next. In other words, we create our own method, and it's a bit of a combination of the other 4. And so you can imagine in this method, there's sort of like an infinite number of options depending on the number of debts that the client has. So this one could actually be like a whole bunch of options all in one. Now, have you ever thought about, because some of you listening have probably thought about all of these or have known about these different methods in the past. I definitely don't think there's much that's new. I do think the one that's like the most triggering or the one with the most emotional baggage, I just kind of came up with that on my own from talking with clients. And so I don't know, maybe you haven't heard about that one. Either way, some of these are probably pretty familiar to you. Have you ever thought about, we often talk about what they all, you know, how they differ, but have you ever thought about what they all have in common? They all say, pay the minimums on all of your debts except for one. Prioritize that one debt until it's gone, and then pick the next debt and do it again. They simply disagree on which debt should be first. And I firmly believe that the answer to that question isn't mine or yours to make, Coach. It's the client's. Okay. They all have the same strategy, though. They all say, pick one debt, throw everything at it, and then pick another debt and throw everything at it and pay the minimums on everything else. They simply disagree on which debt you should prioritize. I will say that we do typically follow that method or that philosophy of sticking with one particular debt until it's paid off and then switching to another one. But also, If a client were to come to me and say that they wanted to spread their money out for some reason, okay, I would probably explore that as an option. I would. We don't typically do that. I don't think I've ever had a client who has done that before. Usually a client, like I said, will pick one debt, pay the minimums on everything else, but throw everything extra to that one debt. Okay. They simply choose different debts to prioritize across all of my clients. I've never had a client say, like, I want to pay extra to a whole bunch. I would explore it. I would consider it, in other words, because I am curious as to why the client wants to try that or why they see that as being beneficial in some way. I personally cannot think of a reason why somebody would want to do that, but that doesn't mean there aren't any good reasons. All that means is that I can't think of any of those myself, but I'm curious. And remember, curiosity is the best thing that we can bring to this journey. So hearing the client out and saying, why do you want to try that? What do you think that's going to afford you? What benefit do you think that's going to give to you? I would hear all of that out. Typically, what I have experienced is by picking one debt and throwing everything to it, it becomes a very focused approach and the client can get behind that. Okay. So they can see one debt rapidly decreasing by focusing on one instead of sort of dividing their finances or their extra money towards like all different cards or all different debts and that kind of thing. But I would be open to it. Typically what we say is that divide and conquer when it comes to your money doesn't work very well, which is like you divide all of your resources, all of your financial resources across a whole bunch of things. You end up making really small progress, or it's just not as easy to see your progress, I think, right? And again, being able to see with clarity the progress we're making can really help to boost motivation over time. So typically focusing on one goal at a time can be really helpful for a lot of clients, especially at first. Okay. Now, I want to just recap the 5 methods really quickly. Number 1 is the Snowball method. Number 2 is avalanche. Number 3 is Kiyosaki. Number 4 is the most triggering method. And number 5 is a customized approach, working with the client to sort of navigate that one debt at a time. I have had clients successfully pay off debts using every single one of these methods, and that is how I know that it works. I have proof that there is not just one way that clients successfully get out of debt. I just know it to be true. So when I hear people say that the only way to get out of debt is the snowball approach, just all of my experiences point to that not being true. Okay. It is great for some clients. Some of my clients absolutely use the debt snowball method and it works beautifully for them. But to say that my other clients aren't doing it correctly because they're not using that method is simply not accurate. Right. And I think that's the message that is often portrayed out there in the world, that this is the only way of doing it when there's a lot of other ways. And ultimately, it is the client's decision to make. Okay. So coaching is all about figuring out what you think of something and how that is impacting how you feel and then the actions you take. In order to honor the coaching philosophy, I like to end every episode with a question for you to reflect on or ponder for yourself. The purpose is to deepen your own awareness on the episode topic, but also it creates the opportunity for you to share your thoughts with me. And I would love to hear from you, coach. Let's get the discussion going on these 5 methods. I would love to hear from you. If you are watching on YouTube, drop a comment with your answer to today's question or join the conversation in our free community for financial coaches. Hop on over to Facebook and search Financial Coaches Unite and ask to join. Here is your question, coach. If you got out of debt yourself, why did the method you chose work for you? Where were you? Where were you mentally, emotionally, and financially when you decided to get out of debt? And how did that play into your decision to use the method that you chose? If you didn't have debt that you paid off, think about a past client or talk with a friend about their journey and ask them some of these questions from this episode to hear what they say. And I would love if you shared your answers with me. So if you got out of debt yourself, why did the method you chose work for you? In the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be tackling what you need and don't need to start financial coaching. We're going to get really specific in that episode. I know there's a number of questions you may have if you're thinking of starting, or if you are just now starting. I know you're percolating on some things. You're thinking, do I need that? Do I not need that? And we're going to get really specific in next week's episode. I believe financial coaching is the best and most rewarding way to make a living. I truly love what I do. If you're ready to learn and see how to become a profitable, successful financial coach, check us out at financialcoachacademy.com to learn more about our online resources, our free trainings, and our events. As always, I love hearing from you. If you have any questions for the Financial Coach Academy podcast, submit them at financialcoachacademy.com/podcast. And if you love this podcast, please, please, please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to me. I will see you next week, Coach.